Hi guys, it's Mrs. Belknap, and I'm here with Standard 15, Part 1, the last of the standards in the Virginia and United States history curriculum. And this standard, I'm just going to read it to you, covers economic, social, cultural, and political developments of recent decades and today. So what does that all mean, you ask yourself? Well, here we go. Standard 15A has to do with the role of the U.S. Supreme Court in recent decades and today. And we're talking about some things like the membership of the court has changed since the civil rights movement to include women and minorities. The first female was appointed to the Supreme Court by Ronald Reagan. Her name was Sandra Day O'Connor. Then Ruth Bader Ginsburg was appointed by Bill Clinton. And the second African American to serve on the court, Clarence Thomas, was appointed by George H.W. Bush. And so the makeup of the court has become more diverse since the civil rights and the women's rights movements of the 1960s and 1970s. In recent decades, the Supreme Court has been influenced by the civil rights movement, and where the civil rights movement of the 40s, 50s, and 60s focused on the court to achieve equality, that model has been followed by other groups, minority groups in the United States, like women and gays. And so they've used the courts to help to extend civil rights and promote equal justice. And this is something that you'll explore a lot more in U.S. and Virginia government in your senior year. The Supreme Court also has worked to protect the individual rights listed in the Constitution. It identifies a constitutional basis for a right to privacy that is protected from government interference. And the whole idea behind the creation of a Supreme Court is to stop laws and executive actions that are contrary to the Constitution. So remember back to Marbury versus Madison and the idea of judicial review, that the Supreme Court has the authority to review all laws passed by Congress. Those laws are reviewed when somebody brings a case that involves a law that they want to challenge. Same thing with executive action. The Supreme Court has the right to overturn any executive action that it feels is unconstitutional. Okay? All right. Moving on to our next topic, that of immigration. Now, we've talked about this in class all throughout the year, but the fact that you need to remember for Standard 15 is that in recent decades, the majority of immigrants have come from Asia and Latin America. And so that includes both Central and South America. So if you look at this map here, this really nice map that was done in 2007, you see how they've keyed it so that the thicker lines here indicate where more people have come from. So you have lots of people coming from Asia, lots of people coming from South America and Central America to the United States. All right. The push and pull factors have remained largely the same throughout the centuries of American history. So we talk about things like stuff that's pushing them out of their home country, religious persecution, political persecution, lack of employment, extreme poverty. And so what's pulling them to the United States? Just the opposite, the chance for political freedom, religious freedom, more economic opportunity, jobs, education, and things like that. All right, so push and pull factors have remained the same. But you need to remember that the groups who are coming in most recent decades are Asian and Latin American. All right. Then there are issues related to immigration. So again, this is something, because it is it impacts the United States today, something that you'll explore in U.S. government next year. But some issues related to immigration policy. Does immigration put a strain on government services? Are the public schools overburdened because of immigration? Are there burdens placed on healthcare? Are there burdens placed on welfare services and things like that? So those are just some of the issues that states and the federal government have to answer, some of the questions they have to answer through immigration policy. Immigrants often fill low-paying jobs in the United States, jobs that many people who were born in America aren't willing to do. And so a lot of governors support immigration reform because they feel like they have jobs for people, and there's really a crisis in filling some low-paying jobs. Border issues. What do we do about the border? Do we close the border? Do we open the border? How do we police drug smuggling? How do we police illegal immigration? These are all questions that are before us today as American people. All right. Pathways to citizenship. How does someone become an American? Is one of the issues related to immigration policy. And bilingual education. As you can see from the political cartoon here, that some school systems address immigration issues by offering bilingual education. That is where people are educated in the language that is native to themselves. Not all school systems across the nation do that, but there are a few who have decided that that's the best way to educate everybody. And then some other things, increase cultural diversity, and the idea that we have to create a respect for all people that live in the United States, and so that there's a respect for all cultures and not just one predominant culture. All right. Contributions of immigrants throughout American history, diversity, here's that word diversity again, but diversity in culture, so diversity in music, the visual arts, and literature. They play an integral role in the labor force and have since the very beginning, when indentured servants were the immigrants coming to the colonies. And then a lot of times people who come to the United States are really well educated, and so we have achievements in science, engineering, and other fields. All right, switching topics again, speaking about science, engineering, and other fields, we have 15C has to do with technology, and one of the main areas of advancements in technology in this last part of the 20th century is the space race. All right, we talked about this a little bit in class in our meeting of the minds, and what the space race meant to the United States in the Cold War, and the fact that it really comes out of the military preparedness of the Cold War. And in the early 1960s, President John F. Kennedy challenged the nation to put a man on the moon by the end of the decade. So that would mean 1969. And so as president, he allocated a lot of money for the space program. In the 1960s, we had the first United States astronaut orbit the moon. That was John Glenn. In 1969, Apollo 11, led by astronaut Neil Armstrong, landed on the moon. Neil Armstrong was the first man to walk on the moon, and he said, "That's one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind," as he walked on the moon, the Apollo 11. Then in the 1980s, we had our first female astronaut take to the stars, and that was this woman right here, Sally Ride. She was part of the Space Shuttle program, see the shuttle behind her, which was the first reusable spaceship or spacecraft. Okay. Moving on with technology, I found this little video that I'm going to play for you. It is a set of television ads from 1993 by AT&T called You Will. And as you watch, I just want you to think about what in this is true today, is just a fact of life you couldn't live without. Here we go.
Have you ever taken a picture of your food and sent it to all your friends?
Nice picture.
Have you ever telegrammed someone from the convenience of your own car? Or spent countless hours upon hours looking at pictures of other people's cats? You will, and the company that'll bring it to you, AT&T.
So I think you get the idea, but a lot of those things that were just sort of these wild ideas in 1993 have become a part of our everyday, and we don't know how we would live without them. So some technological advances in recent decades, Regarding space, I already mentioned the space shuttle, the first reusable spacecraft. We've sent the Mars rover to Mars to explore the surface of that planet. And we had the Voyager missions in the 1970s to explore the outer solar system, and it's still exploring today. Then there's the Hubble telescope, space-based telescope that has provided information about the universe. In communications, we have satellites that drive our, no pun intended, drive our GPS, brings us television, news shows, movies, on demand, all of that stuff that, 50 years ago was still just a dream. Then, of course, advances in robotics. One thing I've always wanted secretly for Mother's Day was one of those little vacuum cleaners that just runs around the house all day, but I've still never gotten one because my husband's afraid the dog will be afraid of it. But I'd love to have one of those Roombas vacuum cleaners. As far as work and school, I would place money on the fact that at some point before you graduate from college, you will take an online class. Or maybe you're not going to go right into college and you're going to go to work. You might do training that's online. That is the 21st century. Look what you're doing right now. You're watching this video and you're not even in class. Okay, that should be an easy question to answer on the exam. As far as healthcare, we're looking at x-rays, CAT scans, MRI. Whatever you can imagine, we have been able to create it in this last few decades. All right, so that is it for the first part of Standard 15. Be on the lookout for some information on the Reagan Revolution next. Have a great day. Bye.